Everyone, this is Julie Bean. Welcome to my video showing you how to make wearable art using artwork that you might have created. In this case, I'm using Brett Bean's artwork, and we're gonna be going ahead and encasing it in resin. So this is gonna be a three-part series. Part one is gonna show you how to prep and seal your images. Part two is gonna show you how to actually use the resin, and we're gonna mix it up and pour it. And part three is going to be turning it into jewelry. So we've gotten a lot of requests for this type of information. So you might have seen us at Comic-Con or other shows, and you'll see this jewelry on display. And people often ask, well, how do you do that? So this is response to that. And I also want to say thank you to all of Brett Bean's patrons on Patreon, because they are making this type of video possible. If you want to learn more about that, there's a link in the description to this video. So in terms of what you're going to need to do this is you're going to need some jewelry findings. So I have some little bezel settings. These are by Nunn Design, and they are a 1/2 inch inner diameter. And I have some earring hooks. You're going to need some Post-its, white glue. I'm using a tacky glue. I like it. It's a good consistency. I do not recommend Elmer's. You're going to need some toothpicks, a sealant for your images. I love Nunn Design sealant. It works really great with inkjet images, which is what we're using right here. I'm going to be using a hole punch. That's why I chose the 1/2 inch diameter bezel settings, because I knew I could get a matching hole punch, which is a huge time saver. A measuring cup, some stir sticks for your resin. These are just popsicle sticks. A 2-part resin. This is going to be part A and part B. And we'll go into how to use that in the next video of the series. You're going to need a paintbrush, a Sharpie marker, and possibly a pair of scissors. Kind of depends on which avenue you take, if you're going to cut out your images by hand or use a hole punch. So let's first talk about your images. So these are all different images by Brett Bean. In Photoshop, we shrunk them down to be just ever so slightly larger than a 1/2 inch. And that's because when we hole punch them, I didn't want to have any white show. So I wanted just a little bit of bleed on the edge. You'll also notice, because I'm making earrings, that I mirrored my images. And we are using a heavier paper. This is a 51-pound weight paper, which is nice and thick, but not too thick. It's also matte. And it's definitely not printer paper. You don't want to use printer paper for this. It will not give you the results that you want. So let's go ahead and actually get our images into our settings. I have a couple done here already. But what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and take this little owl guy, and I'm going to flip the paper punch upside down so I can see the little view. And I'm going to line it up. So I've got my owl, and I'm going to punch. And now if you didn't want to use a hole punch, you could just cut him out. But a hole punch is way easier. So now we're going to take our glue, put a little bit on the Post-it pad, and get some on the toothpick. On the back side of our cutout image, we're going to put glue all over, all the way to the edge. Flip him over and place him in the setting. Now in this case, I want him upright, so I want to make sure his head is oriented properly to the little loop, and I'm going to push him down. And you see what a time saver that hole punch was. So now we're going to let him dry for a good 15 to 20 minutes. You want to make sure your white glue is 100% dry before you add the sealant. Otherwise, it's going to potentially get a little bit ripply. And in this case, if there was any white glue along the edge, then you would see that white glue forever. It'd be sealed in there, which is not what we want. But I've already gone ahead, and this guy I did ahead of time, and he is dry. So I'm going to open up my sealant. Now you can use laser print images as well. Most people though have an inkjet printer at home, so I do like that you can just use an inkjet. Okay, so we've got some sealant on our paintbrush, and I'm going to start by going along the outer edge. And I want to make sure I get all the way around there. And then once I've done the outer edge, I go ahead and I paint the inside. And this is coat number 1. So we're going to let that dry for 15 to 20 minutes. And then we're going to do another coat. That'll be coat 2. We're going to let that one dry for 15 to 20 minutes. And then we're going to do a third coat. It's really important not to skip any of these steps. So one thing about working with resin, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in part 2 of the video, is it's hard to get right. And especially when you're just starting out, you're probably gonna have some boo-boos. Some things are not necessarily gonna turn out perfect. So it really takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of patience. It's not necessarily a quick craft. So you wanna make sure that you do go ahead, take all these different steps, and go through them and be careful. And then you'll get the results you want, but allow yourself to make a few mistakes in the beginning. One of my biggest mistakes was not doing 3 coats of sealant. And what would happen is the resin itself would seep into the image because it wasn't properly sealed, and I'd end up with little blotchy spots. So it just didn't look very good. So take your time, do all the steps, and it'll be a really fun project, and you will eventually get the results you want, but please do allow yourself to make a few mistakes, especially when you're just starting out. So basically that's all there is to going ahead and prepping and sealing your images. Make sure you do those 3 coats, and once they're all done, I'll go ahead and I'll show you how to actually mix your resin and pour it on into your little settings, and then I'll talk about cure times and different things like that. Thanks for watching, and please do check out Brett Bean's Patreon page. It's under 2D Bean, and you can again find that link in the description of this video. I'll see you in the next video.